Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's start off talking about AEW. Let's start talking about Jim Ross, because there's been this big story over the course of the last few days talking about Jim Ross's future with AEW, specifically his role as a full-time announcer in AEW going forward. Now, this was a report first reported by Ringside News, which I know what people will be saying, Ringside News, really? Well, there is a little bit of weight to the story, so we will get into it. According to Ringside News, Jim Ross is moving away from announcing on a full-time basis in AEW. Now, the AEW announcer will still sit behind the table for big matches and major events, but word is that he'll be working in other areas of the company going forward. He's reportedly going to do more backstage segments, like sit-down interviews with big AEW stars. The report noted that it was actually Ross's call on wanting to change up his responsibilities within AEW. Now, Jim Ross signed a 3-year deal with AEW in April of 2019, and back in May, Ross spoke to DAZN about initially doing a contract with AEW that made AEW president Tony Khan happy as the company looked to build stability. He said, quote, "I hope that in a perfect world, I would like to stay working for Tony Khan in AEW and take it year at a time. The contract I came in here was 3 years because that's what Tony Khan wanted. He wants stability. It made Time Warner happy because they're used to my work in their company for many years and the WWE stuff as well." Now, once his current contract with AEW expires in 2022, Ross said he'd like to take it a year at a time. He said, quote, "I would say I'll do this year and then let's evaluate and see where we are health-wise, motivational-wise. Then if I come back, I'd like to come back year at a time. That way, it doesn't put Tony in any unnecessary stress, because by the time my contract ends, I'll be 70. Now, it must be stated that this report got a lot of people talking, and people were certainly curious as to what this means when it comes to Jim Ross and his future with All Elite Wrestling. But there's been a bit of a dampener poured on this, because first of all, SE Scoops quote tweeted this to Jim Ross and said, "Is this true?" And Jim Ross simply replied, quote, "It's news to me, ... It was also noted that AEW President Tony Khan said to F4W Online that reports that they are looking to remove Jim Ross as an announcer are inaccurate. Now, he didn't say, I think this is important to state here when it comes to Tony Khan, that he didn't state that, he said that those reports that they're looking to remove Jim Ross are inaccurate, but he didn't go, well, you know, what I think is interesting about this report. So first of all, when it comes from Ringside News, you could say, the credibility is in the mud. I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. But Caster Haynes also tweeted that he had heard similar kind of things from his sources within AEW. Considering Caster Haynes' recent record when it comes to reporting stuff, when it comes to All Elite Wrestling, whether it comes to the Daniel Bryan signing with All Elite Wrestling, details about CM Punk's debut, details obviously about Daniel Bryan's upcoming debut at All Out, he's been pretty on the nose and pretty on the money. So once Caster Haynes throws his name into there, it does lend a bit of credibility to this report. When Tony Khan is saying that, we're not looking to remove Jim Ross as a commentator, that's inaccurate, that report never said that. That report never said, Jim Ross is going to leave AEW or they're removing him as an announcer, because he is staying on as an announcer. He's just not going to be a full-time announcer. He's going to instead be doing backstage stuff, or he's going to have other responsibilities in the company. He's still going to be doing announcing for big matches and big events. He might just do pay-per-views. He might just 4 times a year. He might just do Revolution, Double or Nothing, All Out and Full Gear. He might just do that. Or he might just do some TV specials. I don't know what Jim Ross is going to do. But certainly, there does look to be something to that. Again, Jim Ross is saying it's news to me. So I think maybe people were taking this story as this was something that was going to be happening in the immediate future as well, which I don't think is actually the case. I can see this happening when it comes to JR at the end of his contract. Again, his contract comes up in 2022, signed a 3-year contract in 2019. I can see a circumstance or a scenario whereby at the end of his contract, they negotiate a new deal, like Jim Ross said, that takes it year by year by year by year. So every year they decide, do we want to do this again? No, yes, we'll roll over. I think that new contract will involve a reduced schedule that will involve him just doing maybe pay-per-views or big matches or big events, whatever that may be, him doing sit-down interviews for Dynamite, for Rampage, for social media, for documentary specials, whatever they want to do. AEW is an ever-evolving company. Again, this is a company now at this point that's got like 4 television shows, right? It's got Dynamite, Rampage, Dark, and Dark Elevation. So there's a lot that Jim Ross can be doing if he's not in an announcing role full-time. And look, I've been critical of JR. I think a lot of people have. I still say that Jim Ross is the best commentator of all time, bar none. Certainly the name and the voice that I grew up listening to, and I think his calls over the years, people can talk about the Attitude Era, and you can talk about Steve Austin and The Rock and all that kind of stuff, which is important, obviously, but Jim Ross was the voice of the Attitude Era, and he was the voice of many great moments after the Attitude Era as well. Is it the same Jim Ross that was performing in the Attitude Era in terms of the commentary desk? No, it's not. It's nowhere near. And there certainly are episodes of Dynamite, or there are moments where you do listen, you go, man, this is just... There are, the botches, like the things when he says WWE Dynamite and all that kind of stuff. Look, I wasn't critical of Jim Ross on that. The botches, they happen. It's live television. Is it a case of Jim Ross being old and he's making mistakes? I don't know. I know that he's not the same. I know that he's not the same as he once was, and I guess that's just the passage of time, but I've still been very big on having Jim Ross behind the commentary desk does add credibility to the show. It's a voice that people recognize. It's a face that people recognize. It's a name that people recognize. If you've never watched AEW before and they just say, oh, Jim Ross does a commentary, you'll be, oh, that's great. Or the first thing you hear when you tune into Dynamite every Wednesday is Jim Ross's voice. And I think to a lot of people, that's substantial. For people that haven't watched AEW before, they go, I know JR. I used to like JR, listening to JR when I watched WWE in the late 90s or the mid 2000s, and Jim Ross was my favorite commentator. He's one of the best commentators of all time. So we still just have credibility. Again, it's just a case of, is he at the level that he once was? No, he's not. And I don't think that's disrespectful to say. I don't even know if JR will say that himself, but he's not. He doesn't do play-by-play anymore. He's the lead announcer, Jim Ross, but he doesn't do play-by-play anymore. That's Excalibur. Excalibur's role is play-by-play. Shivani and Jim Ross do color commentary. And I think Shivani can still do play-by-play. He does it for Dark Elevation, and he did it for Dynamite last year when they had those pandemic shows when it was just him and Jericho. Shivani can still do it. I think as play-by-play goes at this point, I don't even know if Jim Ross can do that anymore. The days of Jim Ross being that lead play-by-play guy is kind of over. He's a color commentator at this point. He's a personality. And maybe it's the point of, the botches maybe are becoming too frequent or whatever. Maybe it's just a case of, we just need to go in a different direction, or we need to manage you better than what we're doing right now. And I think maybe that's the case when it comes to AEW. They just need to manage him better, because, even the case of like that match that Jamie Hayter had with Red Velvet last Wednesday, just some of the comments JR was making was just a case of like, you knew that social media was going to be upset by certain things, and it did come across as strange. And sometimes that's the case with JR at the moment. Some of his commentary just comes across as strange or very, very odd. Or he goes on tangents and he doesn't really finish them, which I know is rich coming from me. But maybe now is the time to start transitioning him out of a full-time role. And I know people will be like, that's an age thing, it's an age thing. But maybe, I don't think it's an age thing in the sense that WWE wanted to remove Jim Ross years and years and years ago. That was an age thing. They didn't like the way he looked. I don't think there's anything to do with the way Jim Ross looks or anything like that. I think this just has to go with, look, maybe we need to manage your time better at this point. I think that's just the right way to do it. So whether or not those reports are accurate, again, Tony Khan says that the reports they're looking to remove Jim Ross as an announcer are inaccurate, but that's never what the report said. They said that he would be transitioning out of a full-time commentary role. It never said he was never going to do commentary again, or they were going to remove him as an announcer. It just said that they were going to move him into different spaces and he was going to be doing commentary less frequently. That was it. So time will tell when it comes to the Jim Ross story here. An interesting note here by Tony Khan, and that's that Tony Khan wants to do AEW shows at Craven Cottage in London. Of course, Craven Cottage is the home stadium for Fulham Football Club. AEW President Tony Khan recently spoke with Dave Meltzer and Garrett Gonzalez on Wrestling Observer Radio about future tour locations in England and talent acquisitions also. Now, while he didn't announce exact dates, Tony Khan did reveal that he wants to bring AEW to Craven Cottage. Craven Cottage is a football stadium located in Fulham, West London, and is the home of Fulham Football Club, which of course is owned by the Khan family. He said, quote, I do want to come to England. It's a huge part of my life. It's a great thing we have with ITV. It's been amazing for us. We have great wrestlers from the UK, male and female. I can't announce exact dates, but I want to bring AEW to Craven Cottage. I think all new additions would be the best home for AEW. He also teased there's going to be multiple new additions to the AEW roster in the next 4 to 6 months. He said, quote, definitely going to make multiple additions in the next 4 to 6 months. Will be some activity in the near future. I can't specify exactly what it is, but I don't think people want me to either. So when it comes to the Craven Cottage thing, again, if you might be familiar with some of the work that I do when it comes to United View, etc. Obviously, I'm a big football fan over here in the UK as well. Craven Cottage isn't the biggest stadium in the world. Holds about... They're renovating a stand. They're renovating a stand because it's a very old stadium, a very, very old stadium. And they renovated it a while ago when Fulham first got into the Premier League. We're talking early 2000s. For the first season, they couldn't play there. They had to play at Loftus Road. At the time, it was known as Loftus Road because they had to renovate Craven Cottage. It's a very old stadium. It's right on the River Thames as well. And it's an old stadium. And it was renovated back then. And right now, again, they're putting in a new stand, trying to make it more modern. I've seen, according to reports, they're trying to make it a bit like TIAA Stadium for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, it's not the biggest stadium in the world, holds about 20,000, something like that. I can absolutely see AEW running shows there. I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up before in the past. Obviously, you've got the big catchment area of London anyway, plus they own that stadium. So I would be very, very surprised if they don't have AEW shows at Craven Cottage in London. It's interesting, though, whenever Tony Khan talks about Fulham, and I think it's because a lot of people in the United States, I know soccer, football is followed a lot in the United States, but I don't think wrestling fans as much in the US or around the world kind of know Tony Khan's relationship, shall we say, with Fulham, because a lot of the Fulham fans don't really want Tony Khan as the director of football there, which is the role he has. His father, again, Shahid Khan's the chairman, but Tony Khan is director of football. And not many Fulham fans actually want him to be director of football. They're a yo-yo club. I think they're top of the championship right now, but they got relegated from the Premier League. Every time they go up to the Premier League, they get relegated very quickly. So I don't think the Fulham fans are particularly happy with Tony Khan. But look, I would expect AEW to be working events at Craven Cottage in the near future. I don't think that would be surprising. Again, I know that a lot of the renovation that they are doing right now at Craven Cottage is specifically for big events, whether it's, again, like wrestling shows or concerts or whatever. They want to make that far more profitable, so I think that's the plan going forward. Let's move on, though, and talk about a potential show that AEW is going to be doing in Long Island, New York, because AEW is reportedly holding a show at the UBS Arena in Long Island, New York, for an upcoming episode of Dynamite this December, on December 8th, according to Andrew Zarian of the Matt Man Pro Wrestling Podcast. Now, this is the third event that AEW has scheduled for the state of New York. The first is Dynamite Grand Slam, of course, that takes place on September 22nd from the Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens. The second is in Rochester on September 29. That's the rearranged show. I was meant to feature the debut of the late Brody Lee back in 2020. That's, again, on September 29 at the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York. Now, it's interesting to note that December 8 will take place only 9 days after Monday Night Raw is held at the same arena in Long Island. Now, WrestleTix estimates that the venue can hold roughly 14,000 fans for a sold-out wrestling event, although no matches have been announced for either Raw or Dynamite in Long Island. WWE is currently advertising WWE Champion Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and others to appear at the event. Now, when it comes to AEW holding this event in this location, AEW reportedly feels very, very confident about the ability to run the arena, because you would be saying, traditionally, of course, Dynamite has been hosting shows, or AEW has been hosting shows in smaller arenas for Dynamite, because there is not a confidence they can't sell the show out, but certainly they want to have a more compact atmosphere, so they're running arenas that hold 8, 10, maybe 12,000 at a push. The United Center was a bit of an anomaly for that, but they managed to sell that out, and that was the biggest crowd that they've had for an AEW event to date. Now, of course, AEW did recently sell out the United Center for the First Dance special episode of Rampage on August 20th, and it now looks like the company is planning on running another massive venue in the upcoming future. As I mentioned, Andrew Zarian broke that story about the UBS Arena in Long Island. Now, according to Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net, they spoke to a source about AEW's plan to run the UBS Arena, which can hold 17,000 fans for hockey and 18,000 fans for concerts. The venue directly correlates with the company's confidence in their talent. They said, quote, "If you have a legit headliner talent, it equals the confidence to run larger venues." Now, when it comes to these these legitimate headliners, I would assume they're probably referring to your likes of your CM Punks and your Daniel Bryans, because of course Daniel Bryan is going to be part of AEW by that point. I would assume then when it comes to AEW, they think if we've got CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, possibly some other names as well, possibly some other names by December. We're talking Bray Wyatt, we're talking Ric Flair, MJF, obviously Hangman Page, Cody Rhodes, Sting. Once you're lining up those names, one would assume that AEW go, we've got more than enough stars to sell out that arena. We sold out the United Center. Granted, that was Chicago, but New York is a very strong pro wrestling state. We know that we can sell out the Arthur Ashe Stadium for the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite, which we have. So why couldn't we do the same in Long Island, New York in December? And I think they're probably right. If you can sell out the United Center, I get that's a bit of a freak event, but when you're looking at the other shows, when it comes to Arthur Ashe Stadium, if you can sell out Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York, why can't you sell out the UBS Arena in Long Island? I think they will. In the same vein that WWE probably will as well, because it's a New York show, and WWE, even to this day, still manages to sell out in New York. I expect AEW to do the same. So AEW is going to be running these larger arenas in these bigger markets. And again, that makes sense to me. The biggest issue will be not a case of can they sell out, can't they sell out, because I think the answer is yes. The biggest issue when it comes to these events in December is, are they even going to be on? Again, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Obviously, All Out is this coming weekend, so I think we're going to be fine when it comes to All Out. But there was uncertainty about All Out. There was uncertainty about SummerSlam when it came to WWE. And there will be uncertainty about these events, especially in December, especially in these states where, again, we're getting new mandates and new restrictions added on. We know when it comes to the Arthur Ashe Stadium show for the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite, Daniel Bryan was meant to debut on that show, but the reason they moved it to this Sunday at All Out is because they're concerned about the restrictions that are going to be put in place or are being put in place right now in the state of New York. So you could argue, whilst it's a good sign that they're booking these shows in New York, again, anything can happen when it comes to these shows anyway. So I think they're probably thinking about that as well. But interesting to see AEW running those larger arena shows. CM Punk has hit back at some criticism when announcing a Q&A for his Heels show on Stars. He said in a tweet, quote, "Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to be doing a Q&A for all things Heels before my episode airs. Use the hashtag HeelStars." Now, he also said about catering to fans. Of course, a big criticism that AEW are catering to fans. Now, after Friday's Rampage, Punk joined Christian Cage and Frankie Kazarian in a ring to chat with the live crowd. In a now deleted tweet, a Twitter user felt that AEW had, quote, really sunk to a low. They have to cater to the fans, cater for the fans after a show, which is ludicrous. Because guess what? Every pro wrestling show does that. WWE, AEW, they always get somewhere on the mic that sends the crowd home happy. That's not an AEW thing. And what do you mean sunk low? Oh, they sunk so low they gave the fans what they want. What? What do you want? You want to leave a show disappointed and unhappy? What a ridiculous tweet. Anyway, this is what CM Punk said, quote, "We're going to sink so low, catering to paying fans will be at the center of the earth around 10 p.m. Central Time on September 5th. So again, it's just... I don't know what it is. It's so weird. Social media is just weird anyway, but like Twitter, this whole I'm either WWE or I'm AEW, it's just bizarre. It's so bizarre. Some people are just so strange. And I will never be able to wrap my head around it, to be honest with you. I just find it so weird, honestly. Finally, Max Caster is set to perform in Chicago during AEW All Out Week. Now, the Bottom Lounge in Chicago has announced that Caster will bring his live performance to the venue on Thursday, September 2nd. The bar/restaurant and live music venue is located in Chicago's West Loop. The Caster concert is open to ages 17 and up. There's going to be a $20 general admission ticket, which includes a performance, a Q&A session, and a meet and greet. The show is scheduled to begin at 10 p.m. that night, with doors opening at 9 p.m. It looks like this performance is not affiliated with AEW. Caster just resumed tweeting this weekend to promote his performance and his Cameo account. He's currently taking requests for personalized diss raps. He said, quote, "Personalized diss raps from the best wrestler alive to you." He added in a follow-up tweet, "Cameo is 25% off for a couple more hours. Order tonight. Working on these this weekend." Now, of course, Caster has been quiet and away from AEW since receiving a significant amount of heat over his controversial rap on the recent 100th episode of AEW Dark. It was reported that Caster has been suspended from AEW for 2 months and was also ordered to undergo sensitivity classes. Caster removed all references to AEW from his social media bios, and at one point he fueled speculation by interacting with several NXT tweets, something of course he hasn't done before. The status of the Acclaimed has also been up in the air, as Anthony Bowens has been working in singles matches as of late and made an appearance on AEW Unrestricted podcast by himself. I don't know what's going on with Max Caster at this point. Either he is still suspended and he's still just trying to do stuff on the side, but he's certainly playing up like he might have left AEW. I just don't think this is something to turn into an angle, to be honest with you. Like, again, was it all his fault? Not completely. I think there are other people that should have got in trouble, and maybe they have. We don't know about it. But what he said was wrong, and he said it, and he has to live up to it. And can he feel hard done by AEW? I mean, potentially, because again, I don't know if he went up to people and he said, this is what I'm going to say. And obviously it was missed in the edit, because of course if they edit it out, it wouldn't have been an issue, and maybe he wouldn't have even been suspended. It's it's just such a weird situation right now. So I don't know what's going on with him, but I hope it's not the end for him in AEW, because I do think there's talent there and potential there, but it's just such a weird situation that's dragging on far too long at this point. It's over. Let's just all move on, in my opinion. Anyway, look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.